hey, we are so pumped to have the one and only Chris Lytle. So, Chris, we'll turn it over. We'll get our mics working.
Talk to you in a little bit, Chris. Take it away.
We thank.
Okay, guys. All right. I'm calling this the power of the pause, but I'm going to use these kind of pause when I want to have you pause. So I'm going to do a quick icebreaker if you can get on the chat feature or however you want to do this. And we'll take the first one or two people that get it right. I just want you to name this Hall of Fame broadcaster. And Brian, you can tell me if anybody's sending anything in.
I will do that, Chris. We've got about a little bit of maybe a 30-40 second delay, but I'll chime in here and let you know.
You probably have to be over 50 to know this, though.
Do you know?
Do I know?
Do you know?
Yeah, but I'm over 50 and I can't remember anymore.
I'm over 52. So.
I'll be 80 in 6.5 years.
Paul Harvey.
Paul Harvey, yeah.
Okay, we'll say it's Paul Harvey, and Paul Harvey is very famous for the pregnant pause. And he said, I've always felt the pregnant pause is more useful for emphasis than shouting, but it can't be done deliberately. It has to just happen, he said. And I was able to find this video of Paul, the last speech he made to the broadcast industry. And this is Paul Harvey's pausing.
Mr. Harvey, it is with the deepest respect and admiration that I have the opportunity on behalf of everyone in this room to say thank you. Thank you for what you've brought to our business. Thank you for what you've brought to our lives. And thank you for being our 2003 R&R News Talk Lifetime Achievement Award winner. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Paul Harvey.
Good afternoon, Americans. Al, the highest compliment of all is to be, well, the highest compliment is when the girl of your life says, I do. But second, it's when you are saluted by your peers. Walter, the pauses are sometimes just because I'm overwhelmed in a search for words. My ABC colleagues have often threatened to save up all the pauses in the Paul Harvey News broadcast. Sells more spot announcements in there. And on that subject, I'm proud that some of you sponsors willing to put your money where my mouth is have made this pilgrimage today. Thank you for your presence. Be still, my heart. I have ever to remember what Walter Lippmann once said, that self-importance has ruined more good journalists than bad liquor. On KDOO in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at the age of 14, I was encouraged once in a while to overhear somebody say, hey, that Paul Harvey sounds pretty good for his age. Recently, I've had mixed feelings when I overhear the same thing.
Paul Harvey wasn't afraid of a little dead air, and as salespeople, we shouldn't be afraid of a little dead air either. In the new conceptual selling, I learned about the golden silence, And that's when you ask a question, you pause for 3 or 4 seconds. It's not that long, but while you're pausing, the client may answer or think about an answer. And if you pause after the client answers for another 3 or 4 seconds, they might think of something else to tell you because they'll want to fill in the silence that you are not filling in at this time. So remember the golden silence. Pause for profits. I hope you have the handout, but if you don't, you can get it later. This is Jill Harrington. How comfortable are you with silence? When you've asked an important question, the customer's answered, pause before going on to the next question. Most human beings feel compelled to fill silence. Let your customer be the one to do that. It's almost guaranteed she will add valuable insight because you've given her that extra time to think. And so if we're waiting to say something instead of waiting to listen more, we're going to get in trouble. So have a better sales conversation. This is Chewy. Chewy is my cat, my rescue cat during the pandemic. Sarah's and my cat. And we named Chewy after the Chattanooga Choo Choo. So that's why his name is Chewy. And also our favorite bartender, Chewy, in Chicago. And my pet peeve is when we are out selling, and whether it's a media kit, a package, a proposal, we hand people a piece of paper that has something for them to read. And then we talk about what it says while they're trying to read. So they can't read because we're talking, and they don't listen to us because they're trying to read. And so when you hand somebody something to read, be quiet and wait until their eyes come up and look at you, and then ask a question or continue. But don't talk while they're reading, or nothing gets communicated. I found this book, Listening as a Martial Art, and it was intriguing to me. I don't think I bought it. I just went on YouTube and read, I go on YouTube. If I hear about a book, I usually watch a YouTube video to see what the client has to say in the book. And sometimes I buy it, sometimes I don't. But Kash Patel, I just took this off of YouTube on his book tour. He was talking about some of the important things about listening, and here goes.
I'll start with something very simple, like not interrupting someone else. Your ego gets in the way. Ego is a big part of our problem with communication and listening. We think what we have to say is more important than what you have to say. We think what we have to say must be said right now. If you can stop interrupting, and if you can check your ego at the door, you're going to learn things you never imagined from people you've been talking to for years. Silence is a lost art. Silence is when you allow someone else to digest what you're saying and what you've said. So decisions are made in silence, not while you're talking, but someone's going to make a decision about you and about what you're saying. You need to give them some room. 85% of whether you succeed or not is going to be based upon your communication and interpersonal skills. And listening is the key. Successful people are much better listeners.
I love that decisions are made in silence idea. And if you think about it, when people are reflecting on what you said, and they're thinking about what you said, and they're trying to figure out what they want to do, they're making that decision. And if you interrupt it, you might cause them not to make that decision. One of the other things he said, if you could change one thing about your current advertising program, what would it be? And then listen to that, because it's a great question. If you just change one thing, find out what they're dissatisfied about. This is a picture of Regina, Saskatchewan, gorgeous place. And the Golden West Broadcasting invited me to speak up there at the beautiful Hotel Saskatchewan. And there I am at the ballroom, and I'm talking about 130 sales reps from there. But I got the call before I got up there about a week or two before, and they said, we're going to need 80 minutes on how to overcome objections, Chris. And I'm thinking, I don't have 80 minutes on how to overcome objections. And, that one of my pet peeves, another pet peeve is people buy training by the hour, not the outcome. I was invited once to New Zealand. They said we need 5 hours. Why do you need 5 hours? And I think about now, last time I went to Sydney, we need 45 minutes. And now I'm on the 10-minute trainer network. And I snuck one by the other day. Thanks, you guys. It was 10 minutes and 23 seconds. I think partly because you add that little intro. But I try to keep things to 10 minutes or less. And I tell the story now about moving to Chattanooga in a new place, and I had a new refrigerator. But a year later, I had to change the filter, and I didn't have a manual. And I thought, how am I going to change the filter? And I said, well, I could download a manual. And then I thought, Chris, there's got to be a YouTube video about that. And I went on YouTube and I had it watch a 2-minute video, and 3 minutes later, I changed my filter. So it's an on-demand world. You don't need a 6-hour seminar to solve your problem. Sometimes 10 minutes is plenty. So it's great to be part of this. But here I am, and I have 8 minutes on handling objections and dealing with objections, which I'm going to share with you right now. So here's my 8 minutes on exactly what to say when someone says no or objects. There are 3 F's of objection handling, and the first 2 are bad. So the first one is fight. I'm going to win this argument. The second one is flight. And the third one is feedback. Feedback is good. Fighting, not so good, because when you fight, you get into these arguments with your clients, and the client, your price is too high. Oh yeah, compared to what? So we get in this battle, or we have another situation. What's it going to cost you to do nothing? And you can get that answer to an objection off the internet now, but it's not really the best way to handle the price objection. There I am. I keep looking at this book. I was in Chicago when I took this picture, but it says now over 8,640,000 copies sold. And I was looking at the cover of my book, The Accidental Salesperson, the other day. It said now over 50,000 copies sold. So Dale Carnegie is a big winner in this. His books are always in the top 100 on Amazon. But this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, he said the only way to get to the best of an argument is to avoid it. And so fighting to prove that your price is not too high is not the way to go. 3 words to ban from your sales vocabulary, especially as they apply to objections, that are no, but, and however. Once you say those words, you're in an argument. So flight is another thing salespeople do. Well, okay, I guess you're not going to buy. I'll just slink away. And so we don't want to flight or slinking away. It's not the way to go. But some people just sort of walk out. I was a buyer for 3 years at American TV and Furniture in Madison, Wisconsin. The in-house agency, don't you hate those? I'll tell you, I was called on by 160 people, and one time I got so bored, I told a person, your rates are too low. And he goes, oh, and walked away. And I feel bad about doing that because that was not the truth. But I just wanted to see what he would say. I mean, if somebody said that to me, I say, well, I can raise them. What do you need? But he just walked away. I had one of my correspondence course students write me one time, talked about this is called another what do we call this story? Another mean car dealer story. That's if you have the handout. And this woman had done a needs analysis, and she went back to the car dealer, and the car dealer says, "Oh, it's you," and she had an appointment. I just don't have time to meet with you right now. And she said, well, I looked him in the eye and I said, I'm really excited about the ideas I have for you in this presentation. I worked on it for 3 hours. And she held her ground, didn't slink away, didn't do what the client or the prospect wanted. He said, really? Okay, show me what you got. And of course, she closed the deal. But you've got to stand up for yourself, not fight, but the thing you really want to do when you get an objection is get feedback. Feedback is good. Never handle, answer, or try to overcome the first objection. Never. And if you start the argument, you're in trouble. You want to get feedback. You're going to pause when somebody objects, and then you're going to ask for feedback. Always ask for feedback when someone objects, and I'm going to give you some ways to do that. I saw Paul yesterday on Rising Above, and he mentioned Stephen Covey, and he used this quote, "Seek first to understand, then to be understood." And so often we're just waiting for our turn to talk that we really don't develop an understanding of what the issue or the problem is. My friend Art Subject is in business by phone and smart calling, great guy, very prolific on the internet, SOBCZAK, Art. His one-word answer for every objection is, "Oh," and then you pause. I mean, just look at him like you're looking with your eyes to tell me more, give me more. And it's the golden silence, maybe plus another golden silence until somebody fills the void. It should be the client. And there's Phil Jones is a British trainer, and I like his stuff. And when somebody says, "Oh, I didn't put a quotation mark in there." No, I did. Somebody raises an objection. Okay. And you pause, and then, "Is that your only concern?" So if they don't fill the silence, you can ask that question. So, "Oh," or "Okay, is that your only concern?" I like that. And I tried to do this the other day. It's a reverse prayer position in yoga. I couldn't do it, but I've seen some people that can do it. And I just used this slide to talk about reversing. And I first heard about the reverse from the late David Sandler Selling Systems. And the reverse is when you get an objection, and just say it's your rates are too high, and you say, "Okay," and you could pause a little more. And then you say, when you say our rates are too high means, because it's hard to answer the rates are too high objection without a dollar figure. And then the client can say something like this, "Well, you're charging 52 for morning drive and your competitor's charging 47. And so now you've got a $5 objection instead of a $52 objection. And you can deal with that, and you can talk about all the reasons why it's worth $5 more now, because you're not battling just the too high. You're battling the $5 objection, and you're justifying your price. This is my new go-to negotiation guru, Alexandra Carter. Ask for More, wonderful book. This woman is a professor of law at Columbia University. She teaches negotiation there, and she teaches negotiation to United Nations delegates. Brilliant woman, great book, and great internet presence as well.
And this picture is an homage to my honeymoon trip to Hawaii, which is where I learned how to negotiate. And no, it's not because I married another lawyer, although that certainly made things interesting. It's because, picture this, we're on the Wailua River in Kauai. Anyone been? Okay. In a kayak, and our guide up ahead says to us, "All right, folks, let's negotiate these things to the left because we're headed for that beach up ahead." And everyone else, I think, was drinking in the beautiful Hawaiian scenery, but my brain all of a sudden went somewhere else, because I had never heard somebody use the word negotiate in that way before. And I thought to myself, that's right. When I'm negotiating my kayak toward a beach, what am I doing? I'm steering. And in that moment, I thought to myself, what if I didn't treat negotiation like the once a quarter haggling over the contract? What if I thought of it as just like steering a kayak, steering my relationships, steering my career? And I realized that when I thought about negotiation that way, I didn't have to wait until money was at stake. I could be steering my relationships with my clients, my future clients, my colleagues, even my family and friends. And when I returned from that honeymoon, I looked around and I saw opportunities to negotiate everywhere. Who could I be talking to today? Who could I reach out to make a connection? Who could I be teaching about my value and what I can offer? And who could I be getting to know, maybe including in this room, who could help me in my future business? And I have never been more empowered or more in the driver's seat of my career as I was the day I learned that.
It's a very powerful idea, and I think if you want more, I hate to tell you not to go to YouTube instead of the 10-Minute Trader Network, but she's got some great YouTube videos. And she in this one, she says, when people say no, this is now my first course of action. What are your concerns? Sounds a lot like Phil Jones. What are your concerns? And she continues, why? Because I find that no is not the end. It's often just the start or midpoint of the conversation. Boy, if you thought about it that way, that's a whole different way to think of no. And if I invite someone to be open with me about what concerns they have, there could be many pathways to finding a deal. And so here's a very highly paid negotiation expert giving you free advice there. And I'm happy to share that with you. I love this book, and I don't have a lot of notes for it. If you have the handout, unreceptive, and of course the un is scratched out. And how do you make people more receptive to you? Because when people are objecting, they're unreceptive, and you've got to get them to be receptive. And this is, Tom Stanfield calls this a better way to sell: lead and influence. And so I'm going to read just a little portion from his book, but he's got a great presence and video presence, and this is a very good book. In sales, there's always tension. And when where tension exists, people focus on the relief and not the truth. They just want to get rid of the tension. To end the tug of war, recognize control is just an illusion and drop the rope. Quit playing tug of war with your clients. Wrong answers may feel like the relationship is moving in the wrong direction, but actually it's an opportunity. By uncovering the unfiltered truth, you're either building a foundation to be heard or quickly disqualifying the prospects and saving yourself countless hours of wasted time. So regardless of what they share, remember there are no wrong answers. That's a hard one. There are no wrong answers. And so the sharing of negative information is a sign of trust on the part of the client. So think of it as a test. I'll feed you a little sliver of truth, and if all goes well, I'll tell you more. If no threat exists, more will be revealed. Don't overcome, redirect, or challenge. And don't say, yeah, but ask for feedback. So a lot of us are saying the same thing, but the customer says, I'm not really crazy about the idea of working with you. I've had a bad experience with your station in the past, whatever that, we've all heard that. And you'd say, well, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear we dropped the ball. We've had some problems in the past. Tell me what happened. And then you're listening to that. And they're giving you the unfiltered truth, and you're not pouncing on them, so they trust you more, and the conversation continues. I just go back to what Alexander Carter says, the objection is the midpoint or the beginning of the conversation, not the end. When I was a young radio advertising salesperson, I'd just gotten out of college, and I was playing on the station basketball team, and I'd been a high jumper in college, and I was competing. I was competing for everything. And I fortunately ran across this idea that you don't have to prove someone wrong for you to be right. And I just went, whoa, that's powerful. And two points of view can exist simultaneously. And when you allow people to have their opinion and don't fight for everything, then the conversation gets back to business more quickly, in my experience. The subtitle of this was the other sales and other sales subtleties that set you apart? What can you do that makes you different than all the other people who are out there selling? And I look at this guy once in a while on YouTube. We'll get to him in a second. And he says, he tells a story about an actor friend of his. His name is Jeff Shore. And his friend is an actor, and he said, how do you go out on stage and do the same play night after night? And the actor told him, the professional actor said, the question I always ask is, who am I here for? Who am I here for? And I'm here for the audience. I'm not here for me. I'm here, and I'm here for my castmates. I'm doing this for you. I'm serving you. So I don't think about how many times I've done this. I'm going to do it well for you. And that's a good thing to ask for. Who am I here for? If you're here for the client or you're there for yourself, it's different. If you're there for the client to try to help them sell more, I've always said, the more harder you work to sell their stuff, the easier it is to sell them radio or TV. So Jeff Shore has another video, and I found this while I was researching some of my content. And his thing is no feature dumping. And he says, let the internet do the feature dumping. Everything's on the internet, so you don't have to give people your media kits and your rates and ratings, and tell them about your format, and tell them about show them a picture of your building. That's not the place to start. And he said, it's always caused by the same thing, not knowing our customers well enough. So we talk about us. And I think, Brandis talked about that. You're leading with a fact that's meaningful to them. So that's it. And I just put this quote in because I love his titles. Bob Etherington, cold calling for chickens and presentation skills for quivering wrecks. He's a British trainer, and his line is, never make a statement when you could ask a question. And that's brilliant. If somebody, is that your only concern? Say more about that, which is a statement. But you want to encourage them to talk more and not just come back at them with your answer to the objection. I got some friendly advice from a broadcaster friend of mine named Joe Mackin, and he's retired in Knoxville now, but he was in Madison, Wisconsin with me. And when I started my training career, I did a few programs, and he was nearby one hour. He saw something I did, and he said, "You're boring, Chris." He said, "You got to go see Don Beveridge." And I imagine Speed and Darren and a few of you remember Don. Don just passed away at age 90 last year or two. But Don was always 4 times a year. He came to University of Wisconsin and spoke at the extension or the business center for, not for the students, but for the adult education folks. And I went to see Don, and I'll tell you, this is him later on in life, but you just watch the energy and watch the passion that he has. Talking here.
Let's talk about customer focus. Hey, I want to tell you something. The next guy in your business, the next up, or the next customer in that dealership that walks. You go find out if your sales manager is going up to that salesperson and saying, "Tell me something, that one that just walked out the door? Yeah, what was that customer's basic fundamental overriding need?" I'll work you up. But 95 of 100 salespeople in this industry can't tell you. They have no idea in hell what the customer's needs are. But if he said, "Oh, the needs for a 4-door, the needs for a red car," I'm not talking about need. The guy came through the door because his kid's leaving for college, and he's looking for a car that she or he can get there safe. They came in the car because the neighbor bought a car, and they're looking for a status or an image. We don't know that. Customer focused in selling says that we identify the customer's needs from the customer's point of view, and it is a sales management responsibility for everyone who walks out that door to say to the salesperson, "What was that customer's need?" By the way, I even kid General Motors. I've been to every one of the Chevrolet and all of those great, fantastic systems that you got where you're measuring customer satisfaction of the people who bought the car. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to measure customer satisfaction of the people who didn't buy the car.
Brilliant guy, great speaker. And something Don Beveridge taught me, in one of the seminars I attended, is quit telling people all about yourself. And if you think about it, you've been selling advertising in your town for a few years. The people you're calling on have been in business for 25 or 30 years. They've been called on by other people. They've been told about the station. They may be a listener or viewer of the station. And so the question is, would it be a fair question to ask what you already know about our station, our forum? So let them fill in the blanks. Don't tell them everything. That's feature dumping. So you're not feature dumping. And if you ask this question instead of tell them, you'll immediately differentiate yourself from the competition. Again, this is Jim Cathcart, Hall of Fame speaker, a brilliant author, all over YouTube. But Jim, I found this quote when I Googled the best sales advice I ever got. And there's an article online of the 75 people, successful people, who tell the story about the best sales advice they ever got. And Jim Cathcart was talking to his sales manager when he was in the insurance business. And his manager said, the goal is not to make a sale, the goal is to make a difference. And when your goal is to make a difference, you behave in a completely different way. I like this trainer. She's a Canadian, and she's speaking here to the $1 Million Roundtable, which is a big deal. But Colleen Francis started in the insurance business and tells this story about the greatest lesson she learned that helped her differentiate herself from others as well.
At 22, I was $12,000 in debt because I was paid $2,000 commission, a draw against commission, whether I sold anything or not. And I had sold exactly 2 policies, one to myself and one to my dad. And you've been there. You know, I was barely making enough money to pay for the $50 a month premium on my 20-pay life. And of course, I got hauled into my manager's office, and I got put on a performance improvement plan. Now, I was lucky enough that Greg, my manager at the time, saw something in me that I didn't see because my confidence was shot. What I discovered, when you're $12,000 in debt and failing at your job, you become a miserable, bitter person. Of course, it wasn't my fault, right? I blamed my customers because they were too stupid to see the value that I had to offer. I blamed my city for having citizens that were too idiotic to buy our products. I blamed my company for having terrible products that no one wanted to buy. And I blamed my family, including my ex-husband, because they didn't see that I could do this business. So Greg looked at me and he said, you know, Colleen, we have to teach you how to sell. Now, you guys have all been 21 before, and you know that it takes a massive amount of self-restraint to withhold what you really want to say. And I mustered up every ounce of self-restraint that I had not to look at him and say, well, duh. Like, look at where it got you the first time. And he grabbed me by the hand and he took me down the hall and he introduced me to Fred. So Fred was the agent in our office that people didn't know much about, except that he was the most successful rep in the office. That $12,000 debt that I had amassed in 6 months, Fred was earning in a week. And he was doing it over 30 hours. He was only working 30 hours a week because Fred was actually a cattle rancher in Edmonton, Alberta, where I worked, and he was spending the rest of his time in the field with his cows. So while I wasn't having success in the business, I was smart enough to look at Fred and say, okay, if you can do it, I can do it. And I went out and made sales calls with Fred. And you know, after about 3 or 4 calls, I noticed something very interesting that I had to ask him about. I said, Fred, we're in all these meetings with prospects, and you're not trying to sell anything. You don't have any contracts in your bag. You're not carrying your rate card with you. You don't have any promotional material. What's going on? And Fred taught me the first of a very powerful series of lessons, and that is the relationship is more profitable than the sale. So Fred got me out of a jam. We paid back that $12,000 in debts because I made some sales. I won some sales awards.
The relationship is more profitable than the sale, and Colleen also says that the second sale is 12 times more profitable than the first. And that's why you need to think in terms of annuals, or why don't we make this a 5-year contract, because it's going to be much more profitable. for you and for me. You don't have to tell them it's for you too. But think about that second sale when you renew that annual, how much easier that was than all the work you put into that first sale. And so you want to think in terms of how can I make the second sale, not how can I make this sale? How can I do this so well that they'll want to buy again? Because that's where all the profit is. I like this guy too, Mike Weinberg, and his dad told him the number one goal in sales is to make the customer as successful as possible. And that's got to be the attitude you have. And here's the last idea, the first rule of selling. This is Robert Cialdini, whose book is Persuasion. And he's somewhere in Europe talking to this guy before a presentation he's going to be making.
You know, I always heard that the number one rule of sales is to get your customer to like you. And once they feel this sense of rapport, they will want to do business with you. I think that's true, but I don't think it's the first rule of sales. For me, the first rule of sales would be to come to like your customer, to show that person that you care about him or her. That allows this person to trust you and to feel comfortable moving in directions that you are recommending, because we all know that we protect the people we like. So if we have come to like our customer and they see it, they will feel more comfortable with us, and they will be right. Because if we truly come to like them, we will be sure that we protect their interests.
Well, I hope you liked this session, but I did it for your improvement, not just for your enjoyment. And remember that education without action is entertainment. To know and not to do is not to know.
Chris.
Anybody there? Hey.
Yeah, we're here.
Hey, I got to tell you, you mentioned this. We had you live at an event last year, and you said you could set your watch by a Chris Lytle event. And once again, you proved it correct. Awesome.
Well,
Thank
Chris,
you, Speed.
That's such good stuff. We've got the number up, the text line. Text your questions to us. Chris, there's a 30, 40-second lag here before we start getting some of this in. So I want to throw to you. I wrote down a couple things on the board here that triggered so much, and I always enjoy seeing you and hearing you. But the first I wrote down was decisions are made in silence, and you talking about the power of the pause. I'll tell you where I went a different place. I start thinking about the world of smartphones that we live in now, that we never, ever allow ourselves to be in a world of silence because there's always a screen in our face. And when I think decisions are made in silence, that's kind of where I went, is that we never allow our minds to calm down enough that we can make some of the decisions that we need to make. You were referencing related to the client, but just one thing that I wanted to share there.
Yep, I think it's so true. And you watch people crossing the street with their phones and it's frightening.
What's even more frightening is watching them driving down the road with their with their phones. The other one I wrote down was, we talk about ourselves when we don't know enough about our clients. I think fundamentally with sellers, I think that may be the biggest mistake that we make. And Chris, I just love for you to elaborate on it, but it seems, and that kind of rang true with me. We just talk too much about ourselves because we don't know enough about them.
Well, and it all has to do with preparation and pre-meeting planning. And you can, I used to go pick up trade magazines, and we talked to, they're not trade magazines the way they used to be, but just going on and reading 2 or 3 articles on. There's an association for car dealers. There's an association for plumbers, and they all have websites, and they all have articles that help the plumber. You can find out in 15 minutes more than you could ever find. By trying to. You don't need to read a book. You just need 3 or 4 facts to talk about, and bring that up. So it's all pre-call planning.
I got to tell you, the thing that really hit me was, I went over and wrote it down, was don't make a sale make a difference.
Mhm.
And then the other quote that I heard was talking about it's all about the relationship. And if you're making a difference, that relationship's going to naturally occur.
Yeah,
All right.
it does.
No, sorry, Chris. We
That's
got
okay.
Brian.
Oh, we got, yeah.
Got questions.
Yeah. We've got earlier we had the Brandis fan club, and Chris. Now we've got the Chris Lytle fan club chiming in here. So you've got quite a bit coming in. But hey, shout out to Ted in Indiana, Pennsylvania. This is a question that you get every year. Chris, what is your favorite book? What should our 2024 read be?
The accidental salesperson.
I think the best book about selling is Spin Selling by Neil Rackham. The best book I ever wrote was Accidental Salesperson. But the guy I'm looking at right now, and I don't have the title at the top of my head, is Anthony Iannarino. And he's got some interesting ideas about going in and doing a briefing for people before you guys start doing your discovery meeting. And he says, I'll tell you, I want to have a briefing. I'm going to give you four trends that are happening in the industry right now, and 10 questions you and your management team should be considering. And whether you do business with me or not, this is going to help you moving forward. And then he goes in and puts on a little 20-minute presentation. And
love that. So when you see
that's-
the text line,
Yep.
keep sending us your thoughts, questions for Chris. Brian?
Yep. I've got another question here. So this one's out of Wisconsin. So shout out to the folks up in Wisconsin. What is your advice to straddle the line between time effective and time efficient with your pauses?
Well, I think the golden silence is 3 to 4 seconds, and I'd use that as a rule of thumb.
Yeah, I don't know the point where it goes too long, it becomes uncomfortable, but I think if we can all focus on the fact that, that pause does draw men, that silence, there's power in that. I teach the power of the pause in delivering proposals. So it's, we just, and I'm guilty of it. We all are. We just talk too dang much versus taking the time to really pause.
The old days, it was the first one who talks loses when you're closing, and you just sit there for 5 minutes looking at each other, which is, that's old school.
Yeah, that's uncomfortable.
In a conversation, 3 or 4 seconds, and if you try that with your kid or your spouse and see what happens. Just practice it. Practice it with just normal conversations, not just sales conversations.
My wife does it with me all the time, Chris.
Yes, right.
Okay, Brian, I know we got some more coming in. So.
Yeah, well, actually, a couple questions. One, everybody wants to know, could you give us a spelling of that book? I believe it's Anthony, but the author of the book?
It's Iannarino. I think the book is called Elite Selling, but I'll send it to you guys after the show here.
Okay. Yeah, we'll look it up in the background here as well, and we'll toss it in the chat on the platform as well. So, hey, here's one. First, another Wisconsin hashtag Chris Lytle, we love you. Hashtag Wisconsin hero. So once again, it's the Chris Lytle.
Thank you.
Here's an interesting one. Okay. They run into a competitor. They have a competitor in their market that goes after their same clients, right? We get that. But their clients buy from the competitor because they feel sorry for him. So it's like a pity buy, right? That they feel sorry for them. It's not that they don't want to do business with the other company, but they feel sorry for this individual. So they buy from him and not their
they
product.
only buying business with the one they feel sorry for?
It's not because of the product. It's not because of the price, but because of the relationship where they just felt sorry. Is there a good way to address this? I don't want somebody to, feel sorry for my good idea, right? So yeah, it sounds like it's.
I mean, Chris, I think we've all probably seen this.
Yeah, and I've always had, when I was selling, it was, Mike Varney handles my business, and I'd just say he's one of the best. But he'll get even better when he's competing with me, because he'll start taking you for granted. If he knows I'm going to go after your business as well, and you'll grant me that opportunity, he's going to work a lot harder for you. So that's what I would say.
The only thing I think there is that you probably haven't really established the value in yourself and your product and what you would do. There's always the pity there, but I think that pity's
hopefully it's not
excuse.
just hopefully it's not just pity. I mean, hopefully it's a relationship or trust or something along those lines. Because, you know, if not, I'm going to write the next book, The Pitiful Salesperson.
Hey, I've got one, if I could chime in, from Minnesota. So shout out to the folks up north. Another one from Minnesota. What are some of your favorite transitions to use when going from information gathering to presenting the value you represent? So some of that transition that you use.
I would, you know, if we're calling the needs analysis or the discovery meeting, and I'm going to come back and pitch an annual contract based on what I've learned, the transition is going to be, let me go back and think about this and consult with our creative team and my manager. I need to do a little more research, and then could we get back together? And it's always a week or less, 5 business days or less. Not tomorrow, because you don't have enough time to think. But if you wait, as soon as I get this proposal written, I'll come back. Now, set the meeting for 5 days from now, business days, and go do your proposal. And the thing I found that most salespeople do, they go out and do all these needs analysis, and they have 5 or 10, and they hadn't made a presentation yet. And now they're just tied to knots. So you should never have more than 2 or 3 unfinished discovery forms.
Or when they do the needs analysis, and the next week they come back with a weather sponsorship. I mean, that's always fun.
Chris, I find one transition that's always worked for me and that I've taught for several years. It's the would you give me the opportunity transition. It says when you get to the point you've gathered the information, it's the would you give me the opportunity to go back and kind of take what I've learned today and put something together for you that I think may help accomplish what we discussed. It's the it's that recommendation. It's would you give me that opportunity? And Chris, you and I've talked about it. It's based on what you told me, those 6 powerful words. But I
love that. And I remember one time somebody said, car dealer says, I'm not interested. And the person said, well, just don't say no to me and my station. Let me bring you some idea and say no to that. Okay.
No,
they came back in and sold them.
All right, Chris, listen, but we do. Okay. I thought I was getting the wrap, and now I think we got one more. So
yeah. Let's do one quick one, Chris. And I apologize. There's a lot of questions coming in. So again, we'll feed these to Chris, and we put up his contact information. I'll put that back up here before we close out. You can reach out to Chris directly, or we'll save all this. We'll get to this to Chris as well. But okay. Last one. I love this one. Speak to the difference between stalking and perseverance. Is there a difference? I know.
Restraining order.
Professional persistence is when you're giving them something that will help them and not just trying to get a meeting. So an article, a note, a voicemail with something that will help them versus just to try to help sell your package or your station.
All right, Chris, we got your information up there. Chris has been with us every time on Rising Above. Chris is one of our featured trainers. We've got the Chris Lytle Accidental Salesperson channel on 10-Minute Trainer Network. His usage is always through the roof. If you want more, Chris, 10minutetrainernetwork.com. Get yourself signed up. We're going to be sending out a link to everybody that signed up for this with a registration link, a QR code for you. But Chris, you know what we think of you. You're a great friend, but Speed always says the golden standard.
The gold standard of our industry training, for sure.
It means a lot, guys.
Now, thank you for being with us again, and brother, I look forward to seeing you soon. Give our best to Sarah.
Will do.
Okay, all right. See you, Chris.